Hello everyone, I'm Gian and this is the Whale FM Project Showcase. In this show we talk with founders and projects in the crypto art and NFT space, oh my god, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. My guest today is David Sun. He's the founder of the project Proof of Beauty, a project that seeks to eternalize blockchain transactions in form of art. Hello Justin, how are you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's nice early morning for me, but got a coffee in the system, so excited.
That's perfect. I'm happy to have you here, man. Can you introduce us a little bit about yourself and the project?
Yeah, absolutely. You already said my name, so I guess I'll skip that part. But yeah, I've been in the DeFi crypto space since the 2017 ICO boom. At the time, I guess I was I guess I got hooked into the space because of CryptoKitties, and eventually somehow I decided to spend some time at a DeFi company at 0x Protocol, and I worked there on a number of projects, more recently Matcha. But I've always kind of had an interest towards the NFT space, generative art, crypto art, and about a half a year ago, as I kind of was like, I gotta give this my stab. I gotta, I've been thinking about this space for years. I gotta, give it a try, and that's where Proof of Beauty, I guess, came as an idea to me, and took a few months to build. So yeah, very excited to kind of talk more about it. And yeah, so. Should I explain Proof of Beauty or do you want to take that?
No, yeah. I guess you could give a brief overview about how it works before we jump into the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Proof of Beauty. So I guess I'll make the distinction now that Proof of Beauty Studios is kind of like I guess I was inspired by Dapper Labs in some forms. Proof of Beauty Studios is like a token experience studio that we create interesting non-fungible token projects. And our first project is called Hash. And this is what you're seeing on the screen right now. Some of the best ways I've heard people explain Hash is it's kind of like the coin making, the penny making machine where you crush a penny with like a seal and then you put two fiat currencies in to pay for it, whatever. It comes out, and you have this nice pressed coin where there's a nice memorabilia on it, right? So we kind of did that, but for the Ethereum blockchain and for Ethereum history. So you can see in the top right, you could put in any transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, any of the 1 trillion plus or minus that we have right now, put one in there, and you'll see one of these artworks generated on the fly for you, right? So if you were to click on any of these artworks, you can even see all of the metadata that was used to create this artwork. So gas price, gas limit, nonce, which transactions were sent, which events were emitted, who received it, who sent it. All of this information, was pulled from the blockchain and converted to different levers in the generative art, and you get a produced visual piece from that. So people have been, collecting personal moments of history that they seem that are very, important and dear to them. People have collected, Beeples, histories, biggest hacks, contract creation things. So yeah, in many ways, it's expressive of what the community wants when it comes to what do they hold dear about our history. And so currently we're in season 0, or we sold out season 0 Genesis, which is about 2,555 hash tokens, so 2,555 opportunities to mint a transaction into a NFT, and then we do have season 1 currently, in the works, which means we're gonna, have a new pricing mechanic so people can enjoy minting again, and also new visuals, a new an improvement on the Proof of Beauty experience. So a lot of things are coming. But we're currently at season 0, so if you do want to acquire one, you would have to go onto OpenSea and onto the secondary market.
Yeah, I would know that because I was trying to mint, and I was very sad to discover that I wasn't able to in the moment, which is perfectly fine. It has this scarcity thing, and makes sense, right? It has a secondary market. stuff.
Absolutely.
But on the design side of things, I have a question here. Maybe it's too personal, but here we go. Okay, on one of your Medium blog posts, you say,
Yep.
Are you a developer? To my designer friends, I say, I'm more a developer than a designer. And are you a designer? To my developer friends, I say, I'm more of a designer than a developer. Do you think with Proof of Beauty, you managed to bring both words together?
Wow, that is a old post that you managed to pull up there. I wrote that years ago, where I would even say that I didn't even know what blockchain and crypto was, or really to the point of what I know today. So yeah, I like to think that that's still a question that comes up to me again and again, and I've consistently had to revisit that during my kind of tenure in the DeFi space, where our work is much more engineering focused. About the it's a matter of finance, right? Which is, if we don't do it correctly, we show the wrong price, or people don't get the right amount of tokens. So in that way, it definitely felt like I was straying off balance, if that's the right way to say. I had moments where I didn't think that what I was great at my work, because it was very engineering. It was all about in the details of like slippage, of aggregating different liquidity sources, and I definitely needed something to kind of balance myself. And I saw that crypto art was an opportunity for me to find such balance. And creating Proof of Beauty, I've come to realize that maybe balance wasn't the right way to look at this problem. I don't think labeling this with such a binary stance, where am I a developer or am I a designer? I don't think that's representative enough now of what my role is with Proof of Beauty and what it has allowed me to do. Right, many ways I now think of myself just as a creative, right? Using design tools, using my experience as an artist, using my experience as a front-end engineer, and also working in crypto as mediums, as tools, as paintbrushes, as color pencils, or whatever you want to call them, to create things, to create net new ideas that I hopefully think that people enjoy. So I'm trying to strip myself of these labels, but obviously that comes with time and maturity that I still have to I still need some time to figure that all out. But yes, it's a constant revisiting, and I've never felt more empowered in a moment of my life where I don't need to be labeled in any of these ways anymore, or at least I don't see myself in need of those labels, and more so feel that I can create in the ways that I know how to create, and that is as a developer, as a crypto artist, as also as a designer. So yeah, hopefully that addresses your question.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. And I was thinking, as it's interesting that you say that, but because even as like a founder, a person who has to go through the business perspective, that has to design the concept, the scarcity on the project, all those things are creative as well, in a sense, right? They're not objective, and so it adds to those things that you do, and you don't have to label them. I think you had an amazing answer.
Thank you. Yeah, and yes, parameterizing the pricing, the supply, those are very difficult things, more difficult than I ever thought. I have spent many walks trying to figure that all out. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for the people that have figured this one out.
Are you satisfied with the current state that you implemented and intend to implement?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of things that hindsight's 2020. Things that I would have done differently with season 0. But I think what we have done with the seasonality models, we have set an awesome stage when it comes to allowing us to continue to experiment and learn about how do we reach out to the greater NFT community. Right? So every season we allow ourselves to kind of blank slate a little bit and say, okay, this is what worked in a previous season. This is what hasn't worked in a previous season, and let's go and learn what we have to do so we can be agile. We can, experiment more with how we can reach to different net new audiences. Experiment with how we have people experience this, kind of hunting, this kind of like mining for transactions experience. So I definitely, obviously, there's always going to be mistakes that we have made that we would think back to. But truth to be spoken, I think we're putting ourselves in a position where we can react quickly, which I'm very happy that the seasonal model will enable us to do. So yeah, I guess I'm fairly happy. The community's response has been absolutely amazing. The fact that season 0 sold out at the pace that it has was truly impressive. I definitely had a few sleepless nights, helming Discord just in case anything breaks. But other than that, it's been just truly enlightening. And to speak to that, I think the most memorable or the most endearing moments is when people are on Discord, saying, it's like, is this the 1 billionth transaction? Or no, not 1 billion, 1 trillionth transaction. It's like, oh no, it's this one. No, it's that one. It's this one. And they spent hours trying to figure that out. That to me is powerful, right? That's the fact that there's a story already behind when you click the minting button, right?
Yes.
That to me is really, really fun, and seeing people do that is absolutely amazing to me. And I feel that's my biggest motivator now. Continue to iterate on hash and work at and turn Proof of Beauty into a studio that could continue to do this.
Yeah, man, it's interesting that you touched on this subject, because the next thing I want to ask now is, considering, like, I saw that you guys have a Discord channel dedicated to discuss the stories behind the POVs, right? Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite background story that you have heard for a POV? Can you tell us?
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's a lot of, like, particularly. I don't have any stack rank. I think that's the right way to say it. But there has been very memorable ones. I always found it funny when eventually people started to mint the transaction of a minting transaction that mints a history. So so that you can imagine there's some chaining effects that were occurring, and that to me was very interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if we do it in a future season where we're like leaning into this idea of chaining transactions and creating art like that. I think that's a really interesting, side effect of the hash minting process. Is you're creating history. You're creating a transaction when you do create a hash token, right? And that's really interesting. I do think this whole saga related to the 1 trillionth transaction hunt was really fun. Just seeing people querying, asking each other, because finding that is not an easy task, right? Because it's the blockchain is block based. They bundle transactions into a single block, and then they're all like canonicalized together, via mining. So then, which one is the 1 trillionth, right? So that has been a whole journey by a few folks that are very data minded, that start digging through, started figuring out what was right and wrong. So that was really fun to see. As a person who, you point a gun at me, I probably cannot write you a SQL query still. Seeing people do that, is very impressive. So, yeah, that is still today very memorable. I know somebody spent like a few hours digging through every single transaction related to the DAO hack. And there's a lot of transaction involved that would result in the DAO hack, the withdrawals, the funding, and all that stuff. He had a flow chart, and then he just kind of like went through the whole flow chart, found every single transaction, and minted pretty much all of them but one, because one was minted already by somebody else. So unfortunately, he doesn't have the complete copy, but he has most of it. And so that was really interesting, right? And chatting with him.
Cut off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the DAO hack.
No, you cut off on the last phrase.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so yeah, that was very interesting. And I kind of chatted with him, and I learned a little bit more about the DAO hack myself. just out of hearing somebody who spent hours learning about it. So I really like those kind of stories where people learn more about us, about this blockchain that we've all found some kind of a home in, right? So yeah, there's a lot of different stories, and I keep on finding new ones that new moments that people are finding about this that surprises me, considering that I wrote the lines of code and somehow people have figured out ways to play with it in ways that I never designed it for. So it's always interesting.
Yeah. So how does it make you feel to see people like dedicating themselves and spending so much time with your project? Like, it must be very, I don't know, like flattering maybe?
I don't know if it's specifically flattering to me. More so, I think it's positive signaling that proof of beauty as an idea has ground as a this thesis around proof of beauty studios is this idea that we can make the token itself part of its art, right? In many ways, I've kind of communicated as clearly as I could through Twitter, through blog posts, that hash without the community is a unfinished product or a project or unfinished NFT experience. It is finished because of people, spending time and learning our stories, right? And coming to hash to collect those stories in the form of an NFT. So in many ways, I don't really think it's flattering. More so, I'm so happy to see that, with the right incentives, with the right, community, we can create something just so magical, right? I was telling a few people, like, yeah, like if you were to look at the contract that, allows minting, it's only about like 80 lines of code, but from such 80 lines of code, we have created something that's indescribable in value, I think, right? The fact that we're coming back to our own history. So I like how much it's signaling that this is something that people want and something that we can continue to explore, and gives me the motivation that we have a lot of other crazier ideas at Proof of Beauty that we would like to do at one point, that continue to experiment with this idea of making the token the artistic process as well.
Yeah, so this is very good. It's very interesting because I feel like you managed to convey your personal passion for the blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have this project that like encompasses like this appreciation for the technology, like the proof of beauty. Mm-hmm. It's also like about the beauty of proof itself, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. Hopefully people like it. That's why it's called Proof of Beauty, right? Hopefully people start to, pick up on that in that. So yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. So can you tell us a little bit more about how did the project got its start? Like, when did you have the idea?
Yeah. So first of all, I wouldn't say this idea is fundamentally that unique. It's not something like, oh, I'm gonna, whenever I tell somebody, here's an NDA contract, sign it so you don't tell anybody. I don't think fundamentally that like groundbreaking of an idea, but for me at least, the idea came in form about a year ago. During the summer, I was just thinking, like, I would really like a coffee book of Ethereum's history with cool art. and so I was like, okay, how would I get such a coffee book? And I was like, well, I could create the generative art, maybe ask somebody to do it. And I started to realize was just like, wait, what's the most, atomic unit of history in the Ethereum blockchain? And that's a transaction, right? You can't divide a transaction off into 2 moments of history. So that kind of leaned into, wait, why don't we create visual art based off of transactions? And then that would eventually become, this idea that originally it was called Ethereum Historical Society. And eventually that name kind of sounded a little too long. And then eventually it became Proof of Beauty's hash. So that was the origin story. It was, and eventually it was just like I had a few weeks off from work, and I was like, you know what, I got to go build this, and spent an absurd amount of my life building it during those 3 weeks, and in a very unhealthy way, but happy to see it come out.
I love that. Oh my god, I lost the unmute button for a
It's all good. We all do that.
So another thing,
Yep.
do you own any POV? Which one is
Mhm.
your favorite if you do?
I do own a few. I do steer clear from any big history moments. I like to leave that to the community. But I minted a few for some of my, I guess, mentors within my tenure in crypto. I've gifted it to those people. So I gifted the very first hash minted ever to one of my mentor slash ex coworker at 0x, and I've done that for a few of them. I've minted like a transaction of I minted the minting of a mint. Oh, wait, so let me have the. I have to keep on dialing this back. I minted a mint of a transaction that minted the contract creation of Proof of Beauty, because I thought that was really cool that people thought capturing Proof of Beauty's history was worth it, and so I wanted to mint the fact that he minted it. So I minted that. I have that. I have a few just visually interesting artwork, because I was like debugging, and I was like, okay, hopefully nothing blew up. I will mint one just to test, and I've been giving those away in some form or one way or another. But I have one or two that are sentimental to myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting because one can go for like a lot of personal value, or one can go for something that will have collective interest, right? One that
Yep.
will have like more of an investment potential, right? So those two directions are kind of opposite, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe unless you like Vitalik, then you can do a personal and be relevant for other people.
Yeah.
But most of the time is one or another direction. I think that's the funny aspect of this project.
Yeah, absolutely, and this kind of ties in well to season 1, and what we're planning around season 1 is we definitely seen a lot of people say, yo, I would love to mint my first NFT transaction, or my transaction I funded my first private key wallet, mnemonic wallet. And we're seeing that as something that I wouldn't be surprised if people would like, and in some form addressed in season 1. So yeah, season 1, where we do have we want to explore thematically is like, how can we celebrate our history, singular history, a personal history, right? As well as our communal history. So season 1, we're doing a lot of cool things around that. We have some really exciting UX experiences around how we can present that in the Proof of Beauty website or pod.studio. We have we're playing around with how supply and token mechanics would work in regards to pricing, to offer a inclusive opportunity for people to mint their own history, blah blah blah. So there's a lot of interesting. We're definitely thematically trying to play around with that in a later season.
Looking forward to that, definitely. On the more artistic side of things, how was the process of creating the POVs? Like a generative artist, it can stop at having a beautiful piece, right? It has to rather produce a beautiful pattern, a process. So how's it like?
Yeah, it has its own difficulties, but I think that there's a shroud of mysteriousness around generative art, and how would you create subjectively beautiful pieces to it. But it still fundamentally comes down to, I think, just basic compositional theory, or aesthetics theory related to graphic design work to any traditional art field. We're just using a different set of tools, right? And our tools aren't as, and I think this is a thing that many people have a hard time struggling with, or have a hard time grokking. Something that I had to really learn is that unlike like a pencil where you're drawing, where the line goes definitively because you move your fingers in those ways or your hand in that way.
Gotta be good for that.
What's up?
You gotta be good enough to do that.
Yes. It takes a lot of practice, and I've learned that the hard way too. But with generative art, it's a lot more like splatter painting, where you're aware of how it works. Obviously you have an intuition of like Newtonian physics, but when you splatter it, you're not going to be able to guarantee where the splatters go, right? But with this, there still is some amount of control related to that, and so a generative artist is really controlling what you can control and then letting go of what you can't. So how do you do that? Well, then that means that you kind of have to have a deeper understanding of some of the tool sets you can use, right? So that could mean using vector fields, using noise functions, using texturing methods like with shaders or whatever. It could be using gravitational physics or electric magnetism physics. All these really interesting mathematical properties, and understanding how much of that you can predict and how much you can't, and then coming back to using all these tools and saying, okay, how can I splatter paint something that's visually interesting? You do it, and obviously there's going to be a few that just looks like utter, I'm not sure I'm allowed to swear, but crap, right?
It's okay.
Right. So with that in mind, I have, one of my processes is I would, render nearly about 2,000 to 5,000 of these on my computer, and I would look through them all and see if I can hit a certain threshold of like 40, 50, 60% of them looking good. Then I would say this algorithm is getting closer and closer to something that I can, use and release. So it's iterative, but there's some amount of you kind of just have to let the chaos do the work.
That's such a dude. I have never seen it that way. No one has ever put the way that you did. Like, if someone were to have said like, "Hey, haven't you realized there's tons of generative art that is not on a computer, right? Like, we already have generative art."
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very interesting. Even because when you are actually like drawing on the computer, then it's even less generative than actually painting with paint, right? Because the material has physics, as you mentioned. And although you have a degree of control, it's a spectrum, not a specific. That's amazing.
You're
right now.
No, I mean, you can even say this. Yeah, what you made a point there. I feel that's incredibly important to define arts, and that's something I had to learn, very slowly through my, art teacher. Is I really do believe that fine arts is a lot more, what do you call it? Generative, if that's the right word, than most people think. You are still at the whims of a system, and that system is what we call Newtonian physics, and friction, and the pencil consuming its lead, right? And I think the best artists are the ones who have an intuition around that, right? When they draw a sketch, a portrait of a face, the ability of them to throw a line on a piece of paper in a way that, in 10 minutes later, is like their hairline. That to me is impressive. Being able to control your muscles, the angle of the paper, the friction, all of that. We're doing a lot of complex computations there that comes out of sheer practice, right? But there's a lot of, and that to me is why I absolutely love traditional art. Is just this ability to have to learn this intuition and master it, right? In many ways, I think how I interpret generative art, it's similar. I think to how I learn it, how I think I'm mastering it, or not mastering. I think mastering is giving too much credit to myself. Improving upon my skills as a generative artist.
Oh, dude, definitely, definitely. Because as it's interesting that you put as intuition, because in truth, those are not aspects that one can rationalize much, right? You can
Yeah.
try, but by the end of the day, it is something that through experience one gets used to and cannot translate back to language.
Yeah.
And this is a very, it's a very beautiful thing about art.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so it has this majesty of mysteriousness because the craftsmen and their ability to create, while can be explained, cannot be easily replicated by another pair of hands. Um, and
Mhm.
and there's something innate about that, I think.
Yeah, and interacting with the word even, right? Because
Yeah.
I was like reading the other day about like comparison between digital pianos and actual like acoustic pianos, right?
Hmm.
And one said a lot about the expressiveness from the artist comes from the fact that the hammer beating the string causes resonation, right? That
Right.
the pianist can feel that,
Yeah.
and it's that feedback, is that interacting with nature and physics
Yeah.
that allows that expressiveness. And I think that's like this is just poetry. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I would like to also speak on that too. Is I think there's a difference between playing a electric synth or an electric tool versus understanding the intuition around that tool, right? I think there's some artists that I can think of who deeply have such a knowledge of it that to them it's almost this. It's not just them playing it; they know how to play the tool, right? They know how to use a tool, and just like a traditional physical piano, they have an interpretation of like the electric signals or whatever, how those are transformed through audio processing, analog tools or whatever, and having that deeper knowledge, I think, is so powerful. And in many ways, net new art as well, right? And that kind of intuition, that kind of mastery can happen. I mean, I'm not the one to speak on how do you get that mastery because I could barely play the guitar, so. But yeah, I think there's a few, just as someone who likes music, some music artists that really know how to tap into even the digital stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is beyond my comprehension how they do it.
No, yeah, but I agree with you. I agree with you. We went in a bit of a tangent, but
Yeah.
no, I think it just adds to me personally, because this is about my partially about my craving for this project.
Mhm.
I really love this. I really, really love this, and I'm looking
Thank
forward
you.
to be able to mint my stuff. So
Yeah.
it's nice to get to know like the creative process as a whole. Like we are persons with our experiences, and this sort of things to me they add to the project.
Mhm.
So on a more maybe technical business related side of
Yep.
things, does the team pay close attention to the secondary market? And if yes, what does it tell you? What kind of information are you guys trying to gather?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to that point, yes, we are hyper aware of what the secondary market is. And something that I'm learning about how do you gauge it, as at an artistic level, at a business level, blah blah blah. So to that, and what I believe is our relationship and what we can do to offer to the community when it comes to appraisal and buying and selling on the secondary market is like, first of all, like, yeah, like we are a new project and we are offering a different way you appraise pieces, right? I think a lot of other token projects, they kind of guarantee you some amount of the rarity system built in, right? There's X amount of crypto aliens in the crypto punk universe, about that, about this. But for us, it's fundamentally based off of the Ethereum blockchain, right? Some of the rarity is correlated to that, right? If somehow in 10 years from now, everybody's sending like 700 GUA transactions, and owning a 700 GUA transaction history may not be as valuable anymore. The leading zeros, we build the amount of color palettes you see is dependent to how many zeros is in the transaction hash from 0x0000. The more zeros, the more valuable it is. But people have figured out it's like, well, it's like a one in a like a few million or a few billion to get a leading zero of 6 zeros or 5 zeros, and then from the 5 0 you need to have a transaction of this kind of condition to get the right amount of palettes, right? So there's a huge complexity to rarity when it comes to these artworks, and I think that's something that community will need some time to figure out on the secondary market, and that's something that we're, as an artist level, I think that patience is the best thing we can do here, and obviously just ways that we can help through working with other liquidity discovery tools like NFTX, NFT20, and other of these kind of protocols that are a layer on top of these NFTs. I think those would obviously help with price floors discovery around that. But we do know that we are creating something that is net new or a little bit undiscovered when it comes to appraisals, and we're willing to help or nurture a community that's going to figure this one out. But we're not going to be having a heavy hand in this. I think it's really going to be left to the community, but we're well aware of it and finding ways to communicate it clearly to people when they want to appraise these artworks.
Mm-hmm. So are you guys? Maybe you guys already have. Sorry if I don't know yet. But like, do you guys intend to have like percentage per trade across all of them, like checking all of them and knowing, okay, this is completely unique or not?
Yeah, I guess we have that at a very, very basic level. If you query through the attributes through Proof of Beauty on OpenSea, and you can play around with, okay, I want a unique one, this one, that one, select it. You'll see from the 2,555 if there's that one that is unique. I've been very curious myself. If somebody, I'm frankly just not, talented enough as a data monkey to do this, but I would like to see all of this information on the greater 1 trillion transactions that we have on the Ethereum blockchain, right? I've seen some anecdotes from people, but it'll be interesting to actually run against all these queries. I was like, okay, on the whole freaking blockchain, this is a percentage, right? And the 2,555 of season 0 captured this much of this 1 trillion transactions, right? And you can kind of base your rarity a little bit off of that, but also there's a historic component to this all, right? I believe the highest sold transaction or Proof of Beauty hash for about 50 ETH was the very first transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And what do you care about the rarity there? Maybe not, because it just represents such a deep moment of our history, right? So
of course,
right, it's just like so many layers to it, and I think those layers people are discovering how to invest, how to appraise it, how to buy it, and also sell it, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe, as you said, in the future, someone will go through the monumental task that is to.
I guess I'll.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say if anybody does it and they want to, like, let me know and I'll figure out a way to help you. If that means like giving you guys a little bit of a funding to do this for a few weeks or whatever, like, let me know. Like, I want to see it. So I guess I'm making a call, like a posting here, I guess.
Yeah, and then it becomes like, yes, of course, within the limited supply that each season will have, the characteristics that they will have as well. There is going to, maybe the value will shift more from like technical scarcity to like the scarcity of mean, like
right.
of meaningfulness, right? As you said. So yeah, very interesting dynamics that this project produces, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, like this algorithm definitely, when I built it, it was not for Proof of Beauty's hash. It was for another another project, and I realized it had a very strong visual, diversity, I guess I marshaled it to work for Proof of Beauty's hash season 0. I'm very excited that it works.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your Everydays project?
The Everydays. My Everydays was just me. Project gives it too much credit. It just was me exploring a little earlier in the year or last year around just doing generative art, doing cool things around that. I didn't really have too much ambition there beyond just after work I wanted to do something, and I created something generative and hopefully posted it every day, and didn't last too long because I was working on Proof of Beauty hash right after it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would like to go now to community questions.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the Genesis round. When will there be more opportunities to make new POBs? And is there a way to generate a sort of preview of the POB without actually minting it just to satisfy our curiosity? I was trying to do it after the initial 2,525 were minted, but the result was an existing POB totally unrelated to the transaction that I entered in the field.
Yeah. After Genesis season, we are working on season 1. Season 1, depending on how much hours I could spend on it, amount of coffee and amount of motivation I have, we're really hoping to get it out by mid-April. Between me and the other Proof of Beauty folks, we're working hard to get that out. So that's going to be exciting when it does. When it comes to previews, technically you could always preview any of these. You put in a transaction, you hit the search icon. I believe it should work. I don't believe I've turned anything off there. You can see it, you just won't be able to mint it. And you'll see the metadata and everything. But yeah, it's a preview there. And if that doesn't work, hop on our Discord, DM me, and we'll figure that one out if that's an issue to you. I guess stay tuned for season 1. Season 1 is coming soon. And I'm very excited about it. There's a lot of cool things that we're trying to do that is going to be very interesting, very new, I think, for hash.
Mm-hmm. Definitely looking forward to that. What kinds of data visualization would you like to see more in the future?
Data visualization, if we're speaking on the capacity of what our blockchain history is and visualizing that, I'm very interested in the correlation of like Twitter sentiment or cultural sentiment related to how the blockchain reacts. Hopefully I answered that question a little bit there in that way. I'm not sure exactly what we're implying here, but I think, and I wrote this in I believe the manifesto, was, we have already made a lot of great SQL queries against our history. I personally would love to see more on not just the blockchain data in itself, but to how the community, the community that orbits it or reacts to it or whatever. I think that would be very interesting. And obviously I would love to see more data on season 0, on how the mints were, what kind of mints were coming through. Labeling, is this a historic one or is this an aesthetic one or whatever? I think there's some really cool things there.
Definitely. What inspired the aesthetic narrative of Proof of Beauty?
Proof of Beauty at large. I'll speak on Proof of Beauty and then I'll speak on hash season 0. Proof of Beauty, the design tends over to a brutalist design language for many reasons. Reason 1 is I'm incredibly lazy. Brutalism is easy for me to build as a front-end engineer. yeah, like there's definitely something of a, you know, well, if I were to make this a fancier button, that would take me a little longer to build, and I could not do that and focus on, you know, other things, considering it was a one-man team for a while. That was reason one. Reason two is I actually have a deep appreciation of a brutalist design. I think it's counterculture-y, it's brutal, right? And I like that. And for, you know, something that is very artsy, I think it fits well. Point three is I built this website mainly, or I built the brand, and we're iterating on the brand in this philosophy that you want to go. It's kind of like going to a modern, you know, museum of art, where, you know, it's white walls, simple things, allowing the art to command the presence of what you're seeing. So the website has been, and the brand of Proof of Beauty has been designed around allowing the art to speak loudly and let the brand, the UX, to kind of nurture that experience. So that's why we're very brutalistic about that. On the hash algorithm, I was kind of inspired by I had one of my friends gifted me a book on Eastern European graphic design, and within there's a lot of like Bauhaus style works, and I was very inspired by that geometric style of the works, and I've always done very geometric stuff, but I really liked it. And at the time was also reading a lot about different printing, traditional printing mechanisms like block printing, duplex printing, and all those different forms, and decided to play around with that texture for Proof of Beauty's hash algorithm, and that's what you're seeing, those kind of like dots that's inspired or based off of the duplex printing process. Mm-hmm. And I interpreted a lot of this Eastern European design with the grids, with the circles, and created something geometric there. But then I also gave it my own spin, which is finding ways to create interesting, you know, compositions with strong colors with that. So yeah, hopefully that answers on aesthetics.
No, it does. It's for me. It's very interesting how hard it is to find an ugly one.
Yeah.
It's more challenging. I will be a collector of ugly ones, you know. I don't want to have the prettiest. I want to have the ugliest. That's way more complicated. Look at this one. This thing is huge.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the largest ones. When he first, like, this is one of those artworks where, you know, I've seen about like 6,000 to 7,000, 8,000 of these run through. But when I saw this one the first time, I was like, okay, that's a one I'd never seen before. It's like I haven't seen two big white circles, quarter circles, paired up like that, and create such an interesting composition. So yeah, it still doesn't. It still surprises me what has been produced, and that's part of the fun of it all.
This is crazy. This is amazing.
Yeah. Kudos to him for finding it. So.
Yeah. Okay. In the future, would the team consider hosting this project on another blockchain, one that maybe has less impact on the environment with each transaction than the Ethereum blockchain?
Yeah. I'm very well aware of the impact that the Ethereum blockchain has on our environment due to how proof of work works. Yes, we are very, 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 very in tune, looking for an opportunity to build projects on other blockchains, not just for sustainability reasons, but also I think there's a creative tap that we can look into, because we can then all of a sudden do a lot more computationally intensive mechanics that cannot happen on the Ethereum blockchain, or can't happen on the Ethereum blockchain in a very reasonable way that is mindful of you know, the external negative costs to the environment, to people, to the gas consumed. Mm-hmm. So we are looking. It's just that we're in a place that, for one, Proof of Beauty's work are commentary on culture, and we happen to be in a place where Ethereum has the most diverse, most in-depth amount of culture, and that kind of presents as an opportunity to create commentary around it and be on the Ethereum blockchain. But we are very keen on a blockchain that can create such an environment of culture as well, where we have a way to create commentary, create mechanics around it. But at a technical level, there is some moving parts that we're waiting on among some of these other scalable chains. That I think that we're probably months away or max a year away, and we're very keen to live in a multi-chain world, because eventually Ethereum. I mean, I don't know about the status of EIP 1559, but we will live in a world where NFTs will start to slowly get more and more gentrified off of the blockchain, because DeFi needs a lot more gas or whatever. So strategically, there's a reason we also have to leave, right? And so yes, we're aware, and we're working on it.
Yeah, I guess that's really as much as one can do at the moment with the currency.
Right.
I think you already answered this one. Which transaction has sold for the most money?
It would be the first transaction on Ethereum blockchain for about 50 Ether.
All right, it's good to remember that. Let me take a look if we have more of these questions. Did you see that Probability got a plug from Chico Crypto?
Yeah. Somebody directed that to me, and I think that's why we eventually hit a huge run where we sold out Season 0 Genesis. I watched this video, and it's a very informed opinion on Probability's hash, and I watched it and I was like, darn, this guy explained it better than me. So I'm taking my own lessons from him. I've always been a little bit aversive to crypto YouTube videos, but I think he did a great job in explaining the core's ideas around hash.
Yeah, I guess when it's about your project, you can't avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will the next generation have a totally different aesthetic?
Yes. We're figuring out what totally different means here. There will be some visual similarities, but it will have, when you look at a Season 1, you will know it's a Season 1 and not a Season 0. I'll say that much for certain. And every new project that we do that's not, maybe Proof of Beauty's, whatever, all of them would have their own kind of thematic aesthetic within their own constraints. But for hash, it's like these abstract, very colorful, very bright, textured artworks that can be hung as a poster if you wanted to. We're also working within that constraint, but at a creative level, I like to play around with new ideas at a purely aesthetic level. So it will be different.
All right, perfect. Dude, maybe there's no easy answer for this, but how?
Yeah.
If you look at my screen, how is the position determined? Why is this? There is so much empty space on this one. That's what makes it so different. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I could answer that. The answer is going to be a little bit dense, just with the amount of things. But what's actually happening behind the scenes is we're placing all these quarter circles at the smallest quarter circle that you're seeing. We're placing all those in first, right? We place those all in, and it's going to cover the whole screen. And then once we do that, we actually orient them based off of a vector field, right? So if all the vector fields are pointing in that one direction, all the curves will be pointing in that direction. And after that, we then go through another pass, and then we greedily try to replace these small circles with bigger ones, right? And that's its own algorithmic process. And then after that, we then do a prune, where we go in and we clean out a certain percentage of them based off of a noise function. And once we clean it out, you'll get these compositions. So it's like a 3-4 step process that goes through to get these circles or the quarter circles to where they are now. And that's where you see some of the interesting compositions, right? Is maybe this one pruned and also chose the right big circles in the right ways, and then behind it the layer is also perfectly pruned to create compositions like this. So there's a lot of like little moments of alignment that happens to create these pieces.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And I see the granularity over the circles.
Yeah,
It changes from one to another, right? From
yeah,
slot to slot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's like a subtle texturing in there that I feel like that really completes generative art. Is when you add a texturing, it gives it more life than just solid colors. So I really like adding texturing to my works.
Dude, there's so much going on here. It's insane.
Yeah, this one is one of my favorites. I don't know why. I love the pink and the blues.
No, yeah, the color palette on this it's very, very well chosen. I love the salmons, I love the pinks, I love the bluish.
Yeah,
Like there is, yeah. Look at this cyan; it's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of this is just the magic of randomness, I guess, or pseudo randomness, I guess. But I have scraped a lot of palette websites for all of their palettes, and I have a massive 4,000 to 5,000 collection of palettes now that I tap into for this.
Oh damn! How many colors are here then?
I don't remember. I've done this a while back, but I would say upwards of a few thousand combinations or palettes, and then palettes could be combined, and then do the math. That's a lot more possible combinations there. But yeah, there could be quite a bit. And every once in a while I add more, but I like its size right now. It's about half of that, about 5,000.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But yeah, David, I think this is going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed. It was an absolute pleasure having you here and hearing about this project that I have grown to love, and I hope we were able to convey what is beautiful about this for the wider community, for the whale community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's I always like doing these. It allows me to reflect upon some of my decisions and realize some were good, some were bad. But yeah, thank you for having me, and excited to share this, and hopefully people react in their own ways and experience something new with the blockchain because of proof of beauty. So yeah.
Yeah, and people don't mean too much, believe a few from me.
Word.
So yeah, I hope the audience had as much fun as I had doing this. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good time. Thank you again, David. Enjoy your day.
Yep, you too.
Bye bye.